Man Up Entrepreneurship Boot Camps.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lori Montag, Oklahoma Business Journal's 2011 Innovator of the Year, and the founder of the Zanybandz and Slap Watch craze, whose products have been featured on CBS News, The View, The New York Times, Good Morning America, and talks about how to turn your big ideas into big profits. Her Zanybandz alone have now grossed well over $40 million in worldwide sales. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Lori Montag.
She chose this. Check one. Hey, I think I'm mic free there. Okay. She chose that music, by the way. That's just what she. Now, real quick, how many people here have a child that owns Zanybandz?
Good.
How many people here have a child that bought a Slap Watch recently? Oh, yeah. Thank you for supporting Lori Montag. Well, I just want to give you a real quick intro here, but kind of, I guess, in addition to the intro. Lori has been my mentor for a very long time. And when I was 12, I think, Lori, I moved to Minnesota. Family moved to Minnesota. And this crazy lady let me come back and live with her every summer. And she took me to the entrepreneurship woodshed, giving me tips, ideas. Had Chris and I turning, what was it, fence posts?
Yes, fence posts.
It was like destroyed fence posts into bird feeders that we sold at the fair. She basically told us, if you want to buy a car, you need to sell bird feeders. And so she taught us that. And then from there, Lori continued to put up with me, and I used some of her PR ideas and ended up getting on the Sam Jones show where I claimed that I had been abducted by an alien, and Lori had to deal with the fallout of watching that happen on TV as somebody phoned in an anonymous alien abduction, and that was myself. So Lori put up with me as kind of a second mother, and she's made a huge impact on my life. So I'm going to try to ask you some questions I think everybody might want to hear, and then we'll open it up for you guys to ask questions as well. Okay, question number one. Before you did Zanybandz, you had a photography business.
Correct.
Was there a time in your mind where you decided, you know what, I'm no longer going to do photography, and I'm going to do something bigger? Was there a time when that happened?
Yes.
Do you remember can you maybe describe what that was like? Or
I think I kind of always, when I would start a business, I'd have a goal of I want my business to be able to do this. And when it came to a point that I had succeeded at that, which with my photography studio, I wanted to have the largest studio in Oklahoma. I wanted to have the contract for Union High School and the contract for Broken Arrow High School, which had never been done. So I put myself these goals, and when I reached it, and I don't mean to sound like, well, that was just so easy. It was hard to get there, but when I did, I was like, okay, I've accomplished what I set to accomplish. Now it's time to sell it and move on so I can challenge myself some more with something else. And so I knew at that point I wanted to have a national company. I thought, well, we did it here locally, statewide. Let's go ahead now and see what we can do on a national basis. And I kind of think that's what kept me. I knew I wanted to sell something nationally, a product.
I wanted to see if you could share with everybody here, because I think this is something that's interesting. You've always had a discontentment with, or almost like a resentment with contentment, like you're happy with your kids, and you're happy with your husband, and your awesome family, and I love you guys like you're my own family, and it's just a great family nucleus, but there's always a discontentment, like you're just, we can do something better. We're better than this.
Yes.
Where does that come from?
I don't know. I think even as a child, I can remember always my mother saying, are you ever satisfied? And as I grew up, I thought, maybe that wasn't such a bad thing, because I never was. It wasn't always about the money. It was just challenging myself to do more. I've always, even since I was little, looked at life like a board game. I say like a Monopoly game, or the life game that we used to play when we were little. And like I look at myself now, I think I'm 3/4 the way around. And this is it. Get one time. So I want to be able to do everything that there is in that length of time. I think, if I live to be 80 years old, when I'm 40, I was halfway around. And I was a stay-at-home mom until I was 40. I mean, I worked for studios, but I only worked part-time.
You were a stay-at-home mom in the loosest sense of the word. We were traveling with you all the time. We went to work with you, and you were.
Yes.
She did both.
Yes, I did do both, and I always say I had the best of all of it, because I really, at 40, is when I felt like I could go out, actually open a business, and devote the time that I felt like a business needed to have. So, but anyway, I always looked at things as being satisfied was just a...
I'm going to say one thing that I think could be helpful for you guys to know. when Lori raised, your family, and I was spending the night at your house for 12 consecutive nights in a row, that kind of thing. One of the things that Lori, she probably worked when you were working part-time, you'd spend time with your kids, they'd come home from school, you're always there. But then when they go to bed, you'd start working.
Yeah.
And you'd do that. So you probably worked 45 hours a week when you were part-time.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
And then when the kids left, I mean, you went in nitro mode.
Yes.
Okay. Now, one thing I want to ask is, do you read books that inspire you, or what do you get the inspiration from that?
I used to read a lot when I had more time to read. I don't as much anymore, just because I just don't have that time.
Yep.
Now I read more. It's probably like Entrepreneur Magazine and things that have shorter articles that I can find what's the latest things that are going on and the latest trends that are going on. But over the years, I would say Think Big, Act Small was one of the good books that I really liked. All the Donald Trump books, I always read those. Whether you liked Donald Trump or not, he was always a good businessman. So those were, I was always reading something.
Well, now I'm going to ask some specifics. For the people in the audience who are sitting here and they're like, I love that you've sold $40 million of product, but yet I have $7 in my bank account. Could you maybe shed some light on how you got the initial capital to start the photography business? And then the Zanybandz. I mean, because you started with the photography.
Yeah, the photography business was started with a $25,000 home equity loan. I don't know how, but everybody's financial situations are different, and sometimes if you can't do that. My point was that you didn't have to have so much. We started with very little money, and we did all the work ourselves. We built it out ourselves. Our most expensive item that we bought was our sign that went out front of our studio. I think that was $5,000. And the rest of it was just in advertising. I had no money for advertising. So I remember making flyers and taking them out and putting them on cars, and then referrals and referrals and referrals. And failing was no option because I had this much money that I had to pay back. So I had to do whatever it took.
And one thing that you did that was crazy, I thought was one of the crazy, it was probably the best thing I like you for, but it freaked me out a little bit. I was trying to get the DJ company in these bridal shows, and in Tulsa, there's only a limited number of booths, and you said, well, we're just going to start our own then. And I said, we are?
Because they wouldn't let us.
They wouldn't let you in.
There were already too many photographers. They're like, you can't be in it because there are already 7 other photographers. And they wouldn't let Clay in it because they already had DJs, so I thought, well.
So I'm 21, now I've got $9,000 on a credit card I've got to pay off in 30 days. And you've got your $9,000. We both went in, I think, $9,000 each. We bought commercials before we'd ever sold a booth. And
I think our own bridal show.
We did. And I think that's the one thing, though, about Lori that I think is indicative is she bought the advertising before we had anybody committed. And it's like, they're going to commit. That wasn't like you don't fear the failure, it seemed like, or at least you were motivated, but I don't know what happened, but it was.
Yeah, and the thing about it, that it turned out to be the largest bridal show that Oklahoma had ever had. They had the fire department turning people away. It was unbelievable. And the other bridal show afterwards were like, well, do you all want to join up with us now and do a bridal show with us?
Yeah.
Oh, we're good. We've got it now.
Now, here's the deal. When you started the Zanybandz, when did you get the idea for the Zanybandz?
My business partner, Jim Howard, who he's actually doing a surf show right now in Orlando, so he couldn't be here, was in China, and he called me and said, I found these little rubber bands. What they were made for originally is they were rubber bands that were made for office supplies. They were just in different shapes, dollar signs and different things. And this silicone factory was making them in silicone. And so he had to make them into some different animal shapes and the alphabet, and brought back some to his niece and nephew, and he said they went crazy over them. And I still was like, that sounds really stupid. But I said, well, let's give it a try. Let's bring it back. And it had all the makings of a trend. We went back and researched like some of the trends, like Beanie Babies. Beanie Babies were actually born during a depressed economy, just like we had. They were a $5 item. They were collectible. They came in all different characters. So we kind of had those same things. So what we did is kind of a fake it till you make it type thing that we set up in Birmingham at a toy store and set up our display, mostly pictures of what they're all going to look like, and started taking orders to see the reaction before we were going to put in a bunch of money to see how it went. And the kids went crazy over them. And we're like, well, we're sold out right now. Of course, we had done. So, but as soon as they come in, we've got all your information, we've got your names, and we'll be emailing you, and you can purchase them. So we knew then we had a hit, and just started producing at that
One
point.
thing that Lori told me to do, I started the DJ company, was it was just me, right? Me and my crazy car. And Lori's like, you just have to fake it till you make it, honey. I mean,
Yeah.
you're just going to have to start referring to yourself as we. We have two availabilities.
Yeah.
Me, have two. I was like, why do I have to have two? And you're like, well, because if you have one, you sound like you're high pressuring. And if you have like a ton, then no one wants your business.
It's not lying. I'm not encouraging anybody
Telling the
to
truth in
lie.
advance?
Yeah, or just like when someone would call my photography studio about a wedding, and they'd say, I'm calling about your wedding prices and packages. Same thing like what Clay was saying, is I remember I would say, okay, tell me what day your wedding is first so I can even make sure we have that date available. So then they tell me a day, and so then I say, oh, is it going to be morning or afternoon?
And you go, ooh.
Oh, evening, that's great. Yeah, we have the evening open.
We passed. Whew.
We have actually nothing that
Now,
whole month. But
Lori taught me that, and I want you guys to, I'm not kidding. There was 2003, I met with you again about packages, and there was 2003, we booked over 3,000 weddings that year, and there's only one person the entire year, Shannon and Clark, that we didn't book that I talked to. One person the whole freaking year out of 3,000 people, and it's just her system. Because it was a system that, like, every time someone called, what day, and you just,
yeah.
ooh, let me check. Is
See
that
if
the
I've got
morning
that
or the
open.
night? Or
But before I would even finish that and say, oh, evening, that's great. Yeah, we've got the evening open. They might, their next thing may be, well, do I need to come by today and make a deposit? Well, that might be best if you want. And then we can talk about prices when you get here.
So even with the
So
Zanybandz, though, you like had it was big before it was big.
It was big before it was big. Yeah.
I just want to make sure everybody here, the one thing that Lori does, I just want to make sure you guys get this, is that she fakes it till she makes it, but she makes sure that it's true what she's saying in advance.
Right.
Lori will never tell you, she never told a vendor, this show's going to be full, and then we didn't. You and I worked like 80 hours that week to fill up the bridal show. We said it will be full, and then we worked at the speed needed to make it full, but when a vendor said, how many booths are sold? We said, oh, it's packed. Instead of, there could be two people, mainly her and I, sharing a booth, 9,000 each. You know,
But
so
it worked.
yeah. Now, next question I have here before, and we'll kind of open up for questions in a minute here, is how did you find Jim, your partner? Because I know a lot of people are here going, it's great you have a partner in China, but I got a partner in Mulgi.
Actually, Jim is from Birmingham, Alabama, and we met at a show in New York. At that time, I had a national candle company right after the photography studio. And he was there with another product, and I was there with the candle company. And this was right at the beginning when the economy started really going downhill. So we had a lot of free time during that show. And we were across from one another for a week. And so, and we were exactly alike. We were both the whole time going, you know what I was thinking of? Or wouldn't it be cool if they had this product? So we both really enjoyed that part of it, of coming up with just new ideas. We may bounce 1,000 ideas off one another and come up with one Zanybandz. So that's how we met, was at a show. And we continued a relationship over the phone for a year of different ideas and thoughts and stuff about the economy until the day Zanybandz hit.
I'm going to open up for questions in just one second. I had one more thing I wanted to add. With Lori, not knowing this, but like when my mom, I remember talking to my mom, and I said, Mom, can I go live with Lori for the summer? And you were kind of like, okay. When you aimed big and you opened the studio, like it inspired me because you were doing something big. It made me want to do something big. And only thing I could think of, well, if Lori has a business, I can have a business. You know what I mean? It was like, and then when Lori went national, it's like, well, if she can go national, in your face, I'm going to go national. And so it was like kind of a deal where like, you inspire a lot of people without knowing it. But I just want to, how do you deal with the opinions of other people that maybe think you're crazy?
And I know it was like that when I first opened my studio, that word around town was, well, she'll be out of business in a month. I mean, I even had one photographer, I'm not going to say his name, that called me and said, I will lie, cheat, and steal if that's what it takes to get your business for the Broken Arrow High School and Union High School. And so that's what I was up against, and all the photographers band together, about 5 of the well-known photographers in town, went to Union High School, had a meeting with the principal, told him, you probably don't know that she's just got the contract for Broken Arrow High School, and it's impossible for a photographer to photograph all 900 kids from Broken Arrow, all 900 kids from Union in one summer and get it done. They can't do it. It's impossible. So, of course, then came the phone call from the principal of Union saying, we just gave you the contract, and here's what we found out. Are you going to be able to do it? And I said, oh, absolutely. I mean, if we have to stay open 24 hours a day, it'll be done. And he said, well, this is your one chance. If you blow it, you'll never get the contract again. And as of right now, I know Josh Atkinson is the owner of Montag Photography, and it's been 9 years. They still have the contract for union.
One thing I want to say that
a lot.
when you told me, I remember I went to ORU, and even though I didn't like Richard Roberts, I liked the school, you know. So I went to Oral Roberts University, and I couldn't believe it. But after doing a bridal show, a DJ sent out an email to all of the brides stating that my wife worked for the news station, and she was the one who gave me this award or whatever. And so, you know, just basically saying that I had faked my way or that I wasn't a real business, and then sent out bad references from people that I never actually DJ'd for. Like, I would never use them again. They ruined my wedding, whatever. And so I went to Lori, like, almost in tears. I was just totally decimated.
Devastated.
And I was just like, why would they do that? You know, and I'm thinking, like, maybe I shouldn't be a DJ, you know.
And I
then,
congratulated you.
Yeah, and then Lori congratulated me. She said, the more mad they get, that means that you're doing something. I mean, you're taking food out of their mouth.
I told
Good
him,
job.
I said, you have arrived. I said, if your competition is not talking about you, then you're not on their radar.
So now, like in the businesses now, when people are pissed, I high-five people, don't I, Jake? I'm like, yes, they're pissed. We're taking their lunch.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and open up for questions. Anybody have questions specifically for Lori? We'll start with Danny. There, I guess, I'm sorry, someone in the back?
No, me. Oh.
Okay.
I'm curious, when you take a product national and then you're concerned about knockoffs, I mean, how do you put that all together to say, hey, I'm going to go out there, you know, how quickly can you get it out to market? I mean, what did you go to do that, and then to fight off the knockoffs?
If you have a good product, unfortunately, you are going to have knockoffs. That's just part of it. We probably spend $25,000 a month right now in attorney fees, sending out letters every day to people that are knockoffs, or like right now for slap watches, people that use the name slap watches. It's not that they can't make a slap watch. They can't. I own the name slap, and it's referring to a watch, so they can't use that in their taglines or the name of their watch or anything. So it's constantly that you have to monitor it and police it yourself sometimes, but it does happen. If you've got a good product, people are going to try to knock it off, unless you get a patent.
I wanted to say one thing. One thing Lori's able to do, and I want to make sure we answer that for you too, is that you don't seem to ever, like, the part of your mind that would seem worried by those people. I mean, you do the stuff, you go ahead and file the lawsuits or whatever you have to do, but you don't give them any of your time.
No, you can't give them any of your time.
You know,
You just have to keep moving on and let your attorney, that's what they're good at. Let them send the letter out and let them take care of it, and you just keep moving on.
All right, next question here.
Okay. Have you done things like this before this, like trend type things, getting the business rolling, but that have failed?
No.
No, you haven't. Because I was going to ask, if you did, what made you have the faith to overstep the fear to step out and do this? But anyway, what did? When you got this idea and you thought about this, what caused you to step out of the boat to do this thing?
From the beginning, I mean, the thought of what Zanybandz turned out to be, Zanybandz was sold in 30 countries, and from the beginning, we did not see that big picture. I mean, we worked out of our house for the first 3 months that Zanybandz were going, just because I wanted to make sure. And there were so many, if you knew all the headaches that went, I mean, Clarence can testify to that. Every day he'd come over and he said, I wish I was videoing this. This could be a reality show. Because it was, you'd put out one fire and it was another fire the next day. And I mean, I remember one day when it was in a 2-day time period, we got national reps across the United States that were going to sell our product. We hooked up with rep companies, gift reps. They all went out, and it was an instant success. They were selling them everywhere. And we had about $150,000 worth of business in that day. So we had to set up our account with a charge company, so we went to charge the things to send out the product. Well, the charge company wouldn't allow us to charge that much. They go, well, you can do it, but it's going to be on a 90-day hold. So we were devastated. I mean, it's things like that. And so then we had to work with their risk management department. So money was like, we had like no money to keep on developing more product, because everything that we would do. And then finally they said, well, we're only going to hold 30% of it. Well, there's your profit. I mean, they're holding a third of your money. So it's all those little headaches that every day you don't foresee them all, but you take them one thing at a time and get through and put out fires. And the next day you come back to work prepared for another fire, because that's just what it's like when, especially in a trend business like that.
For the people here that have a big idea, I'm going to pick on Jake up here in front. You got a big idea, you know. What's the first thing that they need to do to take that big idea and to start doing something with it? I mean, what do you recommend? Writing it down and then just kind of working like one step at a time, or what would be a suggestion?
I always say, people will say, well, how do you know how to do all this? I don't. But the thing that you have to know is how to be resourceful. If you don't know how to do it, you've got to know how to find the people that can connect you to that next step. If you don't know how to order things from China, then you find somebody that's ordered from China and how they found their manufacturing company and how they got distribution and who did they use to ship it in, UPS, or how are they getting it here? All that kind of stuff. Do they have a distribution center, or do they set up their own distribution? All those kind of things. You don't have to know all those answers, but you've got to be able to be resourceful enough to find all those answers. And there are people out there that will help you with that, or they'll give you advice, and this is what I did. This is what I did, that type of thing. So it's a lot of times people hold themselves back because they're like, I don't know the first thing about it. I graduated from high school. I didn't go to college. I would say, I don't have all that information, all the answers. I'm not great on the computer. I just learned to do email probably 7 years ago. I still don't do Facebook, but I surround myself with people that know more than I do about those type of things.
I think one thing that a lot of the entrepreneurs that Brother Clifton shared, and I think with you, Lori, and different people, is that they're not focused on like the big picture. They know where they want to go, but they're only focused on like the next step. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why people that are incredibly, and I'm not ridiculing your level of intelligence,
okay.
But I'm saying but people that are super, super crazy intelligent struggle sometimes to put it together because they're thinking about, well, how do I do this? And what if I do this? And what if I get sued? And what if I do? You can't do it. You just got to start with like, what can I do now?
Right.
I think you're awesome at that. Is there any other questions you have for Lori? Anybody else have any questions for Lori? You, sir, in the green shirt.
Both the products you have right now, like you said, are trend businesses. So what are your plans for, with the trend business, it's naturally going to go away at some point. Are you guys looking for the next trend, or how are you, planning for that?
We already are working on the next trend. It's about ready to go. We probably won't bring it out till January, but yeah, that is in the trend business. And I love that part of it because I am the kind that might get bored after a year. Like if we were still doing Zanybandz today, I'd shoot myself probably because Zanybandz it was insane. We were at one point when we moved out of my house, we were missing between 600 and 700 phone calls a day going into our queue of people wanting to order, and we were hiring people as they walked in the door. It was an insane ride, and I loved it, and it was but when it was over, it was like, I don't want to ever see a Zanybandz again.
With your business, though, she did this with photography. Who here had a photo taken with a lamb or a duck at Montag Photography? Anybody do this? Lori's really good about breaking through the clutter of commerce and doing something kind of almost weird that gets people's attention. And I remember walking into the photography studio, and that phone would be blowing up like it's a call center, or like like it's some sort of you'd think there's some kind of world event going on because you have a lamb outside your business. But Lori's very good at like marketing in a way that gets your attention but doesn't chip away at your credibility. It's like the perfect mix of that. But I just think that's one thing you always have been able to create that buzz. Is there any other questions we have here?
We got time for one more if we've got we've got a question right here.
I have a question. With your photography business, I'm a creative. As you grew, how did you find other talent within keeping with your style? Any pointers on finding?
How did I find what?
Photographers.
Like other photographers without losing your style and your look.
Sometimes I was better to find photographers that weren't just set on their style, but that were really good at taking direction, because when they came to work for me, I wanted them to reflect my style. So if they were so dead set on this is how it is, this is how I photograph, and this is what I do, which a lot of times you have that problem with creative people, is that they know it all. So I had to have somebody that was good, that they knew lighting and background, but that they were able to take the direction that I wanted it to go, because it was my studio and had to reflect what I
Don't you kind of hire attitude and kind of train the skill?
Absolutely.
Pretty much.
I can take a semi-good photographer and make them a good photographer, and they're great with my customers. But I can't take someone that maybe they're a fantastic photographer and they have horrible people skills, because I'll lose all my business.
Okay. Well, hey, any other questions? I think Jared was at the last question.
Man Up Entrepreneurship Boot Camps.